Donnie Darko, a movie regarded by many as being one of the most intellectually fascinating movies of our generation. I often hear people talk more surrounding the timeline and how it relates to the plot, and less on the question of choice. Philosophical relationships center around the addictive, humorous, and conflicting personalities of Donnie are what puts the film up there as one of the greats. I can't recall a movie as complex as this be as interesting and touching without flooding me with a feeling of pretentiousness. At the beginning of the movie, we are misled by questioning the sanity of Donnie simply by highlighting previous issues, namely by just mentioning them, and the focus on him actually reaching for medication. How quick we are to judge.
How quick we are to judge. How quick we are to judge.
Patrick. 3 hours, 46 minutes, 56 seconds.
I'm confused early as to the significance of the engine actually crashing through the roof. I never connected it to the end, and I often think back on it. It was so shocking. I really should have read into it more. I didn't understand where the movie was going after this, given the start and the feel of it. This part of the movie instantly caught my attention.
Make sure you hang up the charger.
And yet had me suspicious, because I was thinking, nah, there's got to be something a little bit more to this. It's about good. Alright, about to start the review. Alright, let's get this started here. Yeah, okay, we're good. I feel like the excellent music selection and the opening visuals of the landscape just sucked me in from the start. I sense something special from the whole movie, right from the beginning. The neighborhood feels calm and the family looks like a well-to-do but down-to-earth type of family. Aside from the dangerous, unexplainable incident with the plane, I had no idea that the existence of everything would fall on Donnie. Donnie Darko, it's a film that's layered in many aspects, and a lot of different storylines to follow within the movie. It's such a complicated thing to explain. It's a simplistic concept when you break it down, the science part, but it gets confusing in relevance to the story. And Donnie gets dissected by fans from every possible angle, but that's not my attraction to the film at all. It actually revolves around the idea of choice. But before I get into all that, I just got to get it out of the way. This is my best understanding of the technical aspects of the plot. So, my best understanding is this, which I'm sure I'll be corrected on because there's been a lot of takes on the timeline. But there is some sort of split or glitch in the fourth dimension of time, which creates two timelines. Problem: while you watch the movie after the artifact appears, we are now on a different timeline, which needs to be corrected. The reason it needs to be is because, to my understanding, the artifact represented by the engine is the key. Donnie's never intended to live. This is explained in the book The Philosophy of Time Travel, which was apparently written by Miss Sparrow. Okay, so we have the manipulated living helping Donnie subconsciously succeed in correcting the timeline. There can't be two Donnies, right? And much of this is explained in quick glances to that book. I could go on about it, but it would take far too long, and it's a subject that's often debated in terms of detail and great length. Not to spoil it, but it appears that Donnie realizes how it all connects by the end, and he follows his recent experiences with the book in his life and connects the dots, and thus changing the fate of the entire world. So at best, I hope I covered that well. I mean, it's a little bit sloppy, I'm sure, because it's a really cerebral plot. Like when you watch it, I took it for face value when I first saw it, and maybe even a couple times after that. I'm not sure how many times I've seen it. I was having a discussion recently, and I think it's like 3 or 4 times. But what stands out to me, and this is what kind of throws the plot off, is the division in characters. I mean, you actually have the dead and the living correspond or running parallel in 2 different timelines, which is seamless from the beginning, so you don't really pick up on it. But the outsiders are Gretchen and Frank, and how they relate to the plot is outside what the other characters are doing. and influencing them in different ways. And it gets really unique, and the more and more you watch it, the more and more you understand the division. And I understand there's recent to me is that there's a director's cut and there's the theatrical release. And I guess the director's cut kind of spoon feeds you a little bit more from the book they're referring to, and explains a little bit more about Gretchen and Frank and how they're outside. Spoiler alerts on all my stuff, but it's a very cerebral concept and hard to pick up on the first time, and really well done. You see, Frank and Gretchen exist in this, or at least for most of the movie, in this different timeline that he's partaking in. And the relationship that he has with them is so much more connected than to the living world, the manipulated living as they refer to it. And he just seems to connect with them a lot easier than the main characters of the story, which kind of and then he has to go through and correct what is supposed to be in the normal timeline, but yet he's being helped by some throughout the movie. I'll explain that, but at the same time he relates more with these characters, and it just raises more questions to me as to who Donnie is, and there's a lot of debates and things like that about what it means and the attraction to Donnie and how he interacts. It almost sounds like trying to explain the movie almost sounds like a little bit of gibberish until you actually see the movie. But the dynamics of the relationship between the dead as opposed to manipulated living, and Donnie having to correct this, yet at the same time getting hints from the manipulated living as to how to correct all this, and then he goes about it. But the relationships that we connect with, it makes me ponder, and it raises so many different questions for me. The parents in this are amazing, yet I can't help but feel like they're negligent. They seem to pay somewhat attention to Donnie's issues, but they don't really investigate. To be fair, they showed up in concern with the psychologist. But other than that, I think they oversaw it. Mind you, it was a different timeline, so I don't know, maybe that's how they would have acted anyways. I'm not sure. Those are a lot of the questions that come up. But they're a lot of fun. They're obviously a loving couple. The dad, I find, actually they're both fun, because you remember the mother, she was kind of snickering a lot at Miss, the teacher, I forget her name. But she's so absurd. And the dad snickering when she's like, he told me to insert it up my anus and all that. And they just seem like a lot of fun. But you get tied in with Donnie's character so much that the likability of the parents, by the end, when there's actually really no storyline, because Gretchen shows up at the end, and essentially she never knew Donnie. It never happened. The event never actually happened, right? So that makes it even that much more interesting. But you get drawn in from this. This is the beauty of it. You look at Gretchen, and she's pondering and sad at the same time, relating to this mom, having known her son but not knowing her son. And then because you're so drawn into Donnie, you feel it with the parents and everything. And then the ending of the movie is really hard to explain. It's melancholy, happy, yet you miss Donnie, and then you have a ton of questions. And I think that's what makes it so impactful.
Gretchen and Donnie, they have a cute relationship. My favorite line from Donnie is,
Donnie Darko. What the hell kind of name is that? It's like some sort of superhero or something.
What makes you think I'm not?
his humor and intelligence are striking. I think it's Jake Gyllenhaal's best performance, at least in my books. I guess Donnie cuts through people's nonsense at school, and at the same time he has an inner struggle while wrestling with how to solve this problem that's presented in front of him that he can't quite see. I also see weakness in Donnie, although he seems intellectually superior to the other characters in the plot. When I watch Donnie ask Gretchen out, struggle through the confusion of the ending, which looks more as though he was hyper and scared than anything, his words at the beginning, calling his mother a bitch, I believe signify his confusion.
One thing about the movie, and I know there's a lot of important lines, but the one that sticks out to me is something that I picked up later that was more impactful. I don't know, maybe it's me analyzing who I relate to nowadays in family, or I'm not sure, but he referred to his mother prior to the engine falling through his room, his last words to her are actually bitch. Those are truly the last words that he says to his mom that I can recall. And then she goes into her room. And then in context, at the end of the movie, that's what I'm talking about as well. It shifts. Because I think about his mother sitting there with tears. And in that timeline, the last words she heard out of her son was bitch. He called her a bitch. And that's essentially where that story ends, in a way. So that's what makes it so impactful. And then the idea that he continues to move along in the next timeline. Had he known what that timeline was going to be, I wonder if he would have said that to his mom. And it also raises questions about, people want to know the future and things like that. Would you really want to know what your last words are going to be, truly? I wonder about that. Would you pick them wisely? Would you change them? What would you say to the last? What would your last words be to the people that you love the most? I don't know. It's different layered things like that are, there's so much more to Donnie Darko than just how confusing is the timeline, where does everything fit in. There's a lot of questions of what if. That's one for me. What would my last words be to someone that I loved if I knew what my last words were going to be, which ironically enough, I guess would be predetermined, but that comes back to the question of choice, which again, I think gets lost with the complications of the timeline, and that's why it's so layered.
The film doesn't rely on its complexity to impress. It builds a relationship with the characters surrounding Donnie that take care of him. The pressure of the countdown and trying to connect the dots brings you into Donnie's world and the story told here. The film raises questions about fate and choice, more than hypotheticals about space and time, although it's interesting and plot dependent. The interesting outlooks of the characters bring a compelling dynamic. Pay special attention to the book and the signals like the flooding of the school and the word cellar door. Everything is crucial in this movie. Everyone I talk to takes something unique away from this movie. I often have a laugh at the fact that technically, we never really knew Donnie and the story never took place, and yet it did. What a paradox. In a word, it was brilliant.
It's about good. Alright, about to start the review. Alright, let's get this started here. Yeah, okay, we're good.